from high above in Mendham.com. Yeah, anyway. Do not God. Yeah, on the roof. It's cool up here. It's nice. Nice views and such. Yeah, I guess I would probably like to live on a first story. I mean, the first story above the first story. Anyway, um, yeah, conference report. Made a video talking about this. I don't know. Probably should come up with a terminology for it. You know, like the big problem or whatever of this value problem. How do you take something as subjective as everybody's personal experience? You know, based on the mixture of how life works out for them, how lucky they are, how smart they are, how clever they are, how whatever they are, that they manage to get through life without having too many big horrors, and lots of restful and relaxing and comfortable moments, and they feel quite pleased with the experience, and would like to do it all over again many, many zillions of times. Blah, blah, blah. Um, yeah, it's a subjective thing, and then some other person could have that same exact life, and because they have a different attitude, you know, mentally, and are looking at it a little differently, they might not find it as valuable, and certainly might not say, well, I want to do that over and over again. And then people are going to have different lives where they're not going to be lucky and they're going to be unlucky, and that's going to change the equation. And so we're all basing our opinions on this subjective, how my life worked out kind of equation, and that's going to taint the argument, no doubt. Um, but I mean, philosophically, we should really work on ways to prevent that from polluting too much of the conversation. You know, I can't deny it. It's certainly part of my perspective is the fact that, yeah, I don't personally, oh, cat romping, find life all that, I don't find it perfect enough. I mean, I was a perfectionist as a kid, and I've certainly given up on that, as it's quite obvious. But, you know, that was part of my psychology and part of how I always kind of viewed life. So I always kind of saw the flaws and and I certainly on the extreme ends had limits where I just knew I did not want to be the elephant man. I did not want to be that person there or that person there. I certainly didn't want to live that person's life or that person's life. I didn't want to experience what they were going through, and I didn't want to experience that. I mean, I had plenty of things I could point to and say, I would never do that. You couldn't pay me enough money you know, in the world. You couldn't give me enough perfect lives for me to agree to live that one stinker of a life. So that logic seemed always obvious to me, and that certainly has become incorporated in the logic that I apply in my philosophy, is that you really have to look at it, if you're going to talk about the whole game of the human race, and then you're going to talk about the whole game of being a sentient on planet Earth, which I think we're attempting to do, then the color you see, or what you make out of this when you blend it all together, when you do that generalizing, um, it's not as good a color. It's not your life anymore. It's not your neighborhood anymore. It's some other neighborhood, um, you know, with shit worms and all kinds of other crap that's going on that just isn't any good at all. Cholera plagues and all kinds of other stuff that you wouldn't want to live through and experience. Um, that's the reality. I mean, the human reality is pretty dismal if you go by the averages. If you take those 100 people and condense it like that one video does. Somebody's got a link to that. I wouldn't mind posting it. And yeah, I wouldn't want to be the composite human being on planet Earth. And I certainly wouldn't want to be the composite sentient mammal on planet Earth. So what else do I have to say? Yeah, that's a personal subjective opinion. Now, how do we turn that into something that's worth having a conversation about? Well, my argument is that it's much like, well, you could just say, look, theology, religion is such nonsense. I mean, why should we even have to argue it? I mean, it has no logical foundation. It's built on a silly premise of belief without reason, which is just ludicrous. So how can you make any sense out of this nonsense? So why do people make sense of it? Why do they force it? Well, they force it because they have a self-interest. They've been brought into it. They're attached to it. So we're back to the addiction word and how that changes the equation. It changes how people perceive the world they're in. So it's no longer just about some balance of comfort and misery. It's about, you have to throw into that equation the prejudicing effect of desire and the sense of that a person has that there's more to do, that there's more games to play and more food to eat and more, I don't know, grass to mow and women to rub up against and whatnot. Yeah, okay. So that desire thing taints the perspective a little and says, yeah, we got to keep doing this, got to keep doing this, got to keep doing this. And even if they're not going to be the one doing it, they want the desire to keep living because they just can't imagine the universe being without that motivating hunger. It's such a powerful thing. But yeah, I just don't see how when you, if we can get the conversation to always stay centered and grounded on the simple truths, which are DNA molecule. Okay, it's not fancier than that. Let's see, I can zoom in on the cat. Zoom on these cameras isn't. It's not zooming. Oh, there it goes. He hopped away. Stinker. He hops like a wabbit. Anyway, yeah. I mean, we got to stay. If we stay grounded on the we always keep that as the frame that this is going to be discussed in. Is that this is a DNA molecule. This is what the science indicates. Chemistry evolving on a planet. That it doesn't do it by some fancy rules. That it's just a bunch of individual packets of DNA competing with each other over billions of years and acquiring through mutation tools that enable them to more effectively consume and reproduce. Again, I'll go back to my rhetoric that it's on an island planet and that consumption ends up being cannibalism eventually, that will start feeding on each other's welfare. And it happens even within species where the dominant players will take all the fruits and the drones will be used up for the service of the emperors. And we certainly have plenty of that in our social reality. And the end game is this perception of value, to create the illusion of value. That's one of the tools. One of the DNA's tools is motivation, is desire, is addiction. It wants you to want. It wants you to keep being hungry and keep playing the game. Not that it wants, but that's what the evolution is inevitably going to create. It's not going to create organisms that say, or feel unattached to the gameplay. The organisms are going to want to play the game subjectively. And again, but we're not just subjective animals anymore. We can be logical and think and do rational math. And I'm saying when you do the rational math, the positives are basically made out of a negative. You're satisfying a deprivation to be pleased. The deprivation comes first. The desire is created out of it. You chase to fill the hole that essentially the DNA drills into you. And it's completely and entirely contrived. The value is completely an illusion. And the downside suffering, the miseries, those can't be compensated by an artificial, contrived, illusionary pleasures. And so if we're doing the real math without distorting the scales by pushing the hand of desire down on the scale, I think it would be obvious to anybody who's going to be fair to the equation that it just isn't going to work. You're not going to get you're not going to come up with a black number. It's going to be a red number. You're going to run a deficit even in a near perfect environment, and we're certainly far short of perfection. Anyway, I do a lot of work here. Anyway, it's very nice though. Look at that. Isn't that just pretty incredibly cool? My poor shed. Oof. Anyway, alright. Oh, I go down the ladder now. Oh, I better turn the camera off. Yeah, I should leave the camera on. My leg's shaking, so maybe I can fall down the ladder now. Please, some people. Make them happy.